Hello guys, welcome to a new video. So we're going to be comparing these two lenses versus each other. We've got the Canon 100-400 Mark II L with the 2x Mark III extender on here, and this is the RF 800mm F11 lens. We're testing images at F11, and we'll do a bit of a conclusion after this segment where we have a look at them images. So without further ado, let's go to the office and have a look at the images. So we're just going to take a look at these images that we've got from the RF 800 and 100-400 Mark II with the 2x extender Mark III. So here we have the 800 RF lens. Let's just zoom in there and have a look at the image quality right up to 100% so you guys can see it there. So that's the quality we're getting from the RF lens. Let's have a look at the EF 100-400. We're getting good detail, I do like it. And let's zoom in there, right in there at 100% and give us a comparison. So that's the 100-400 Mark II. Let's just quickly have a look at the 800 RF and the 100-400 EF. To my eye, I think we're getting slightly better detail on the 100-400, but we're about 6 meters away. And I do think when you focus on something not so far away, if I'm honest with you, the 100-400 does a lot better, especially that it has a better minimum focus at 98 centimeters, which means that lens can go a lot closer. If something comes close to you, you can take an image of it. You can't do that with the RF because its minimum focus is 6 meters. So let's jump to the next image. So here is the 800 RF lens. We have a good image here of this statue. Let's just have a look in the eye. That's where we were focusing at 100%. That's 100%, and again, giving us good detail. I do like it. Again, we're just over 6 meters away here. And let's have a look at the next image, which is similar on the 100-400 Mark II. Zoom in there, 100%. So that's the zoom lens, and this is the prime lens, and I do think we're getting a slightly better detail on the RF when the subject matter is some distance away. I think when something comes close to you, the 100-400 seems to be superior. You know, the old adage of getting closer to your subject matter will give you dramatically better sharpness in your lens. That is very true when you take into effect your environment, because you know heat, haze and cold temperatures can have an effect on your lens. So let's have a look at the next image, which is a duck statue that I've got. This is the RF 800mm lens. Let's just zoom in there to 100% to show our detail. I think we're getting good detail here. This is just over 6 meters away. Let's have a look at the 100-400. Zoom in there 100%. And it seems fairly good. Let's just jump over to the 800 and then compare that to the 100-400. They're very similar images. I don't think there's any major problems here. If you're interested in what sort of camera I'm using the Canon EOS R 30 megapixel full frame censored camera. So obviously giving us good results, and obviously we're using, if you didn't know, I'm using ISO 500. The aperture set to F11, and my shutter speed ranged between 160th of a second to 320th of a second during daylight. So obviously that's what we're getting in our settings. Let's have a look at the next image, which is a bench. This is the RF 800. So let's just zoom in there at 100% to see what we're getting in terms of image quality, and that's the quality we're getting. We're probably about 8 meters away now, so it's a bit further away. So let's have a look at the 100-400. Obviously this is a similar image. Let's just zoom in there. I do think there's a slight lack of contrast here versus the 800 RF lens. So let me just zoom in there to where we was on the RF lens, 100%. So that's the 100 to 400, and that's the RF. It does seem to be slightly better detail, not much but slightly, on the 800 RF. So it goes back to what I was saying. I think the RF lens does really well at distant subjects, but when subject matter come close to you, it can't compete with the 100 to 400 in image quality as well as close focus capability. You're talking 6 meters on the RF 800 versus under 1 meter on the 100 to 400, even with the extender on. So let's jump to another image, which is some rhubarb leaves that we've got here. I just want to zoom in there. We're focusing this area here on the RF 800 lens. That's 100%. It's not super sharp, but as I've said, I can't see this lens really competing with the prime 2.8s and f4s. Let's have a look at the 100 to 400, see how that does. Zoom in there at 100%. Let's compare it to the 800, and that's the 100 to 400. Very similar. I can't really tell the images apart. The results are fairly good for both lenses. If I was to say, seems to be a slight softness here versus the 800. So I do think at distant subject matter, this is 8 meters away approximately, it does produce slightly better results, but I'm only going to give it 0.5% better than the 100 to 400. You know, if you really wanted to, you could give it maybe 1% slightly better image quality, but I don't think it's more than that. So let's have a look at the next image. So I set out my test chart on the bench here just to see how image quality will be on both of them, because obviously we've got 2 test chart images here. I did have to up the exposure and contrast on the 100 to 400 to make it more comparable. So let's have a look in there in the corners and see how the detail shows up at 200% there. I won't say it's a fantastic showing with the RF 800. Let's jump over to the 100 to 400 and just have a look in there and see how that's doing at 200%, so you guys can see. So that's the 100 to 400 in the far corner, left bottom corner. We're looking at the pattern in these boxes to see how it shows up. And then this is the RF 800. There's a slightly tiny amount of better detail in that pattern. Not much, but it is there nevertheless. Let's just go back to fit the screen so we can have a look at the center this time. Let's have a look at the center there at 200% on the 100 to 400. Do the same on the 800. And that's your comparison there. So that's the 800 RF in the center, and that's the 100 to 400 Mark II with the 2x extender Mark III. And there does seem to be a slight better amount of detail. I also do think that it's more of a true 800mm than the 100 to 400 Mark II with the 2x Mark III extender, because I do think that lens is probably closer to 370mm rather than 400. So you know, it's probably not quite as magnified as the 800 RF lens is, as you can see there. But I still think the RF 800 is doing a slightly better showing at distant subjects. Right, so we're just going to have to take a look at this bottle. This is the 800 RF image, and here is the 100 to 400 Mark II with the 2x Mark III extender, and obviously you can see the difference in bokeh. So that's the 800 RF and that's the EF 100 to 400. It seems about the same. Bokeh seems pretty much the same. Both lenses were set to F11, so that's what you can see in this demonstration. Let's just have a look at the text here. We should be seeing a diamond shape in the actual label in the print material, which we can't see here. So it doesn't seem to be showing a great result. Same being true of this 100-400 Mark II with a 2x extender. I just don't think they're giving fantastic detail when you start magnifying down. But nevertheless, they are both good combinations to have. What I would say is there is a 600mm RF lens available, and I would steer you away from that, because if it's giving similar results to the 800 RF lens, I think the Sigma 150-600 and Tamron lenses are going to be sharper, give you a better aperture, as 6.3 is significantly better than F11 and lets a lot more light in, and they are sharper. I have done tests to verify those on this bottle, so clearly I would say that the RF 800mm lens isn't as sharp as those prime lenses that are a lot more expensive, such as the 2.8 and f4 lenses, as I've said. But I hope this demonstration was informative. Looking at the image quality, we can obviously go in there a bit more if you want to see at 300%. Again, we're at 300% here, and that's the image quality we're getting. So that's the 800 RF lens, and that's the 100-400 Mark II. So that's the RF 800. That's the 100-400. Very similar results. So you know, for the money, I would say that the RF 800 is a reasonable lens to get. So I just hope this demonstration helped you. Welcome to the conclusion of this video. So we've got the Canon 100-400 Mark II L lens here, with the 2x Mark III extender, and here we've got the RF 800 F11 lens, the diffractive optic lens here. So this is a prime, so if you want to zoom you have to move with your feet. This is a zoom, so obviously if you want to get closer you just zoom in, simple as that, or zoom back out. In terms of image quality, they're pretty much about even Stevens. What I found was in low light situations the Canon 100-400 Mark II combo here was superior, especially indoors in low light situations. However, what I found is out in the real world, I found that the diffractive optics was a tiny bit sharper, but I'm going to have to stress how close they are in image quality. Literally, they're pretty much bang on even Stevens in my opinion. You might notice a 5% increase in image quality out in the real world with the RF lens, but in terms of general imagery you're not going to notice that difference. So I found the stabilizer on both lenses about even Stevens, even though this is a USM lens with the 2x Mark III extender on. Obviously that slows it down a little bit, so that sort of brings where the USM probably normally it would be faster. If I take the extender off it is going to be faster, however it sort of levels the playing field when you put the extender on in terms of the STM focus on the actual the mirrorless lens here, the RF 800. So I've got a list here of information to go through with you guys. So it's basically comparing the 100-400 Mark II L lens with the 2x Mark III extender versus the 800 RF at F11. We tested images at F11. I've been taking pictures of this bottle close up, well, as much as this lens will allow, because minimum focus is quite huge. So let's just go through the elephant in the room, which is image quality. They're about even Stevens. Out in the real world I don't think you're going to notice a big difference, and considering the Canon 100-400 has a 2x on extender on, it does reflect not so greatly on image quality on the RF 800. If you're thinking this lens is going to compare with a 300 2.8 or a 500 f4 or a 600 f4 prime lens, you've got to think again, because I'll be honest with you, it's nowhere near. It's closer to the 100-400 with the 2x on than it is to any sort of prime you've ever owned before. So an alternative to getting this might be the 300 f4, put a 2 times extender on that, and you're at F11, pretty much. A lot, obviously having better options in terms of focus, in terms of coverage on the actual entirety of the viewfinder and the LCD screen. So let's have a look at weight. So we're talking about 2.5 kilograms all in all for the 100 to 400 versus 1.2 kilograms. Now that is noticeable. Carrying this around is a lot lighter. As you can see, I can swing that around, no problems, and it's easy to hold. However, if I pick this up, it's not as easy because it's a lot heavier. And if I started doing this video holding both, you'd find that this arm would get quite a bit tired quite quickly. So obviously, image quality we've said is about even Stevens. Let's talk about the focus limiter. So the focus limiter on the 100-400 is 3 meters to infinity versus 20 meters to infinity. I think that's probably too long. I would have liked to have seen Canon bring out a 10 meters to infinity, something along the lines of the big primes they've got. I think 20 meters to infinity is probably too long, but nevertheless, at long distances, you may like to use that. So the minimum focus, which is a big deal, as I touched on earlier. Obviously, this has a minimum focus of 6 meters, and that's vast. Trust me, that's pretty much the length of my garden, and that is probably too much. I would have liked to have seen Canon to have come down with something like 4.5 meters, like you've got on many of the primes, or even the 600 version has that. I think 6 meters may be too long, especially if something comes close to you. So you may want to pair this with another lens if that happens. The Canon 100-400 minimum focus is 98 centimeters. That's under a meter, so that's massive. Literally the distance between me and my camera, which means I can focus and get even macro shots with this combination quite easily. So, are they going to be as sharp as a prime? The answer is no. I don't think the diffractive optics of this lens can compete with a prime lens at all. So, I don't think getting this lens is going to be able to negate the possibility of you having to buy a 500 f4, a 300 2.8, 600 f4, anything like that, or even say the 800 5.6, which obviously is a lot more money. You've got to remember that. So obviously I don't think this lens can compete with the primes, but it can compete with the 100 to 400 with a 2x extender on. So let's talk about price, the big elephant in the room that is. So for this sort of combination, in terms of a grey import, if you wanted to get this grey import combination, it probably set you back approximately £2,000. Around £1,500 for the lens and £500 for the extender. If you were to get this in the UK, it'd probably be nearer to 2,700 because at the moment the 100 to 400 EF lens is selling for around £2,279 if memory serves me right. So once you put the cost of the extender on there, because it's a UK version of the lens, it's going to cost you a lot more. As for the 800, you can pick these up for around £1,000 directly from Canon. I have seen them go for second hand for as little as 800, so you can get it a lot cheaper. Right, something we need to address is focus coverage of your entirety of your viewfinder or LCD screen. Now, the thing is, you get a white box with the RF 800, which is about half the size of your viewfinder area coverage or your LCD screen. So you're only getting a small portion of your focus points covering. So what that means is if something goes out of that white box, you're going to lose focus. You don't get that with the L lens. You get full coverage of your viewfinder. All autofocus points are usable with this lens, albeit not as fast as you would expect in terms of a prime, but nevertheless you get full coverage with the EF lens that you don't get with the 800. So obviously we're looking at the same focal length, 800mm versus 800mm. Image quality versus the Sigma 150-600. Some of you guys may have those 150-600 lenses. I found that my Sigma 150-600 contemporary lens was sharper than both of these, literally a lot sharper. Granted, it's not 800mm, it's 600mm. Obviously I didn't try an extender on to see how that would affect image quality, but this is where I would not want to get the 600 RF lens. It just seems pointless to me. Why would you get an F11 600mm lens when you can get a 150-600 at 6.3, a better aperture, more light comes into your lens? And when it came to image quality, I think the contemporary is sharper than both of these when we start cropping in. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's why I've addressed the 600mm RF lens in this video, where I think it's no contest. You know, it has a minimum focus of 4.5 meters versus 2.8 on the Sigma, or 98 centimeters on the 100-400 bare. Obviously you can put the 1.4 extender on as well, getting you to around 560 millimeters. The 1.4 seems to do really well. The one thing I have noticed when I did compare these two lenses is contrast takes a hit with the extender and it doesn't on the RF 800, which means if I want to get similar results in terms of contrast, I have to put this in Photoshop or Lightroom and up the contrast a little bit just to get it similar to what the RF lens can do. And so in terms of image quality though, at distance, I think they're pretty much even. While I still would give it a slight edge to the 800 RF in terms of distance subject matter, but when it came to closer subject matters, like indoors, like the video I recently did, I found that the 100-400 Mark II L lens was a bit superior. So, in terms of assessing these two lenses, really it's up to you what you want to go for. While I feel the 100-400 Mark II with the 2x extender is probably pretty much even, you do get some benefits like full coverage of all autofocus points in the viewfinder, where you don't quite get that with the RF 800. However, it is lighter. You do have that control ring, so you can use a control ring to adjust exposure, shutter speed, ISO, and obviously the 100-400 does not have that. In terms of stabilization, they're about even. 4 stops rated of stabilization. Focus speed, I found them to be pretty much very similar. So you've got to remember USM tends to be quicker, but because it's got that extender on, it slows it down a little bit. And obviously an STM motor isn't quite as fast as a USM. So when I started looking at the autofocus speeds, I felt they were about very, very close to each other, very similar, and I don't think you'd be too disappointed with autofocus performance with either of these lenses. So in conclusion, do I think the RF 800 is a lens you could or should buy? Sure, I do think it has its uses, and obviously it's beneficial. It's a lot lighter. You can obviously carry it around for a lot longer. But I think if you're going to carry this lens around to do birding or aircraft photography, or do wildlife or sports even, I think you need to pair this lens with another lens. You could pair it with the 100-400 Mark II without the extender, and you'd be good to go, and you'd have your bases fully covered. Personally, I think I'm going to keep the 150-600 contemporary handy combined with this, and that should give me the benefit of having sharp images up to 600mm. Anything that I need to take a picture of that's further away, I can switch to the 800 lens, and hopefully that will do the business. So hopefully you found this conclusion a little bit informative. Make your own mind up. If it comes down to money, you might want to go for the 800, but please don't expect that the 800 RF lens is going to replace you having to buy a prime like a 300 2.8 that is probably 2.5 times more expensive than this, or say even a second-hand 500 f4 Mark II is going to set you back about £2,500 for the Mark I, or about £5,000 for the Mark II. And obviously Canon recently released some mirrorless versions of that. I believe the 600 f4 that they're bringing out is around £13,000. Lots of difference in money here. So hopefully this video was informative. I hope the conclusion gives you a bit more background information on these two lenses. In terms of sharpness, if I'm personally going to go out and photograph things that are closer to me, I'd want to take this with me. However, if you're going to be taking pictures of things that are some distance away, I think this might be a slightly better lens to carry around with you, because it's lighter and has equal focus speed in my opinion to this combination. But in terms of the stabilization, they're as good as each other. I do not think that you will be disappointed with the stabilization, and that's what I like about Canon stabilization. It's just works better than the competitors, the likes of Sigma, the likes of Tamron, even in the Nikon world. I just think that the stabilizer just is smoother, is less jerky than those manufacturers. So hopefully this was informative. Hopefully I got a few points across to you regarding whether which one you feel is better suited for you. Pick the lens that's best for you. Don't let people try and tell you what lens you should get. Make your own mind up. Be informed. Listen to opinions on certain lenses and certain equipment for different scenarios. For indoor use, this is going to be better because you can zoom. You can take the extender off, so you can change that F11 aperture to 5.6 at 400 easily. You can't do that with this lens. It's fixed at F11, that's all it'll be fixed at, and you'll never change that. So, hope you found this video informative. So I just wanted to touch on video, however. This is where I think the Canon RF 800mm F11 RF lens shines and comes into its own. So because it's got an STM motor on this particular lens for autofocus, autofocus is pretty much silent. So for doing video work, this is amazing. It focuses quickly, the stabilization is really useful. So if you're out in the field and you're doing video work, this is actually a better lens than the USM 100 to 400 here. So if you are serious about doing video work, I would recommend this lens. Now, while I've said it doesn't resolve a huge amount of resolution compared to a big prime, like an f4 or a 2.8 lens, for video that's not a major issue because you don't need those big apertures when it comes to video. So as a video lens, this is amazing. While I'm not too overly impressed by the image quality when it comes to taking photographs in the real world, I do think when it comes to video, this lens comes into its own. So that's why I think it is a good idea to get both. If you're on the fence and you don't have the money for a big prime that may cost you between £5,000 and £13,000, you could probably buy this grey import with the extender for probably just under £2,000, while the 800 RF lens sets you back about £1,000. Some extras that you can buy for this lens I would certainly recommend would be obviously a UV lens filter to go on the front, which is 95mm, a nice lens hood. This is a JJC lens hood, not the original Canon one. You can pick these up for about £18. For a decent filter, you're probably talking about around £100, And then I found something called, what's it called? A THRF 680 shoot. Basically it's a mount you can attach onto the tripod mount that allows you to handhold it quite comfortably like that. So I would recommend getting hold of this tripod mount for the RF 800. But in conclusion, I think both of them do a good job, but don't expect the RF lens to compete with one of the big primes, a 2.8 or an f4. When it comes to video, this shines brilliantly. However, because I think the 100-400 Mark II is slightly better, because it gives you full coverage of the sensor, not just the central part, in terms of your focus points, this is actually slightly better. However, it can be a bit lacking in contrast. However, if I was to suggest a sort of combination you could go for to use both lenses in the field, I recommend obviously getting the 800 RF lens and also getting the 100-400, but not have the extender on. Take the extender off, or if you must use an extender, consider using the 1.4. It's significantly better in image quality, and then just have that as your go-to wildlife setup. An alternative to the Canon would be the Sigma Contemporary or the Sigma Sport. You know, because they're quite a bit cheaper than this. The Sport will set you back about £1,200, and the Contemporary around £900 to £800, depending on where you get it from. So again, conclusion is there are good lenses, but don't expect the RF lens to be super tack sharp. It's about the equivalent in sharpness to the 100-400 with the 2x on. It's just a tiny bit sharper. When I said tiny bit, I mean 5% sharper. That's all. You're not going to see it in the real world. Only on test charts will be able to see a difference. You know, and obviously you can always take the extender off the 100-400. That's the bonus. That's the benefit. And even with the 2x on there, you get full coverage of your sensor in terms of focus points. Unfortunately, the RF lens, Canon has limited that to just the central part. So you're basically getting half of your sensor is only covered by the white box for focusing on this particular lens. That's a bit of a disappointment. I think Canon didn't have to do that. Would I consider using extenders with the RF lens? Probably not. F11 is already very dark. You don't want to make it even darker at I think it's F16 and F22. But these lenses paired with the R6 or R5 or EOS R will still do a good job. One last thing before you go, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy the content I do. I know a lot of you guys just skip past my videos and don't like it, but I would really appreciate if you did that. It sounds like I'm begging, I do apologise, but it helps the algorithm and helps people find my content. Hope to see you in another one. Take care of yourselves in these difficult times and have a nice day.